Well, thanks for joining us here on WLTX Plus. I'm Chief Meteorologist Erin Latest. We just got the update on Hurricane Erin. National Hurricane Center still has it as a Category 4 hurricane, but as of this update, 8 o'clock, the winds are now down to about 135 mile an hour sustained, although the gusts, at least from the indications from the hurricane hunters, are gusting at 165 miles per hour. The pressure has decreased. Well, it goes in the opposite direction. So it went from 937 to 947 millibars, the indication of it weakening, at least in the center of the tropical cyclone. It is indicated that it's moving to the northwest at 10 miles an hour. Position is about 700 miles southwest of Bermuda, but more translation, about 135 miles straight due north of Grand Turk Island. That's the extreme eastern island in the Turk and Caicos. Here's one thing that I thought was kind of interesting. I'm going to slow it down and I'm going to zoom in because even though it's moving to the northwest, it almost looks like it's starting to progressively slow down, slower than 10 miles per hour. And it doesn't look like it's going straight up or left. It looks like it's maybe bending a little bit more to the left. Nevertheless, that is important because of the trajectory that Erin is going to take as far as all of the projections. Now, the Turk and Caicos Islands and the southern Bahamians still are under a tropical storm warning, still have a tropical storm watch for the central southern portions of the Bahamas. Now, the wind profiles are indicated from the National Hurricane Center's telemetry is that it's the center of the hurricane where the hurricane force winds are of at least Category 1, expand out to about 45 miles from the center of Erin. The tropical storm warnings, though, that's a different ball of wax. On the left quadrant, it goes up to about 190 miles, and then to the north, south, and east expands over 220 miles. So this is a very large wind profile. And by measurement alone of the tropical cyclone, as far as the actual thunderstorms that are circling around it, well, from the central portion of Erin to the south and to the east, expand about 300 miles, about 325 miles. So as this was a very compact hurricane, even as it was a Category 5 over the weekend, positioned to the northeast of Puerto Rico, as a Category 4 with 130 mile an hour winds, it has grown very, very large, as well as the wind profile. And that's going to be an important factor because all indications still, and I do expect that this probably will change, not so much in the intensity, but possibly the direction. It's expected to still be a Category 4 by tomorrow morning, winds at about 140. By Wednesday morning, 120 miles an hour, so that puts it as a Category 3. And that'll keep like that until Thursday evening. It dropped to a Category 2 and winds of about 110. That puts it almost equidistant between Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, and the island of Bermuda. And then it's projected to make a very drastically hard right turn heading northeast past the well north of Bermuda, and then along the New England coastline and the Canadian Maritime by Saturday evening, a Category 1 with 85 mile an hour winds. The thing about what has changed ever since we got the notification from the National Hurricane Center today at 5 o'clock, they've issued a tropical storm watch pretty much from Virginia Beach all the way down to Morehead City and the Outer Banks. Even though the trajectory right now, this is the official cone from the National Hurricane Center. This is not the projection of where it's going to go. Just a projection by Thursday morning to Thursday evening. It's going to be positioned somewhere well east of the Outer Banks. Regardless of the center line, it could be on either side of the cone from Thursday morning to Thursday evening. Well, even though it's not making a landfall as expansive as Hurricane Erin has been, we could be looking at winds that could be expanding that far. And as far as all the projections, ever since it was indicated as a hurricane, all the projections have kept it moving a little bit further west, and the current projection has it the furthest west. Now, is this going to make landfall in the southeast Atlantic, anywhere from Florida to the Belmar Peninsula? It's yet to be determined. The answer still is no by all of these projections, regardless of where the spaghetti plots go. But it's getting closer to the coastline, and the impact is one thing that we definitely want to take a look at. The tropical storm wind probability, the chance of getting any winds that are 39 miles or greater. Well, now you can see, as far as tropical storm winds in South Carolina, it's still well off the coast of even Myrtle Beach. So for Horry and Georgetown County, it's the closest, but it's not indicative that that's going to be the case. It does indicate, though, as you get into the Outer Banks, so pretty much everything east of I-95 in North Carolina, the probabilities right now go as high as maybe 20% of the probability of these tropical storm winds from pretty much from Elizabeth City to Cape Hatteras, Kill Devil Hills, even as far south as Morehead City. This is a probability table. It's not a guarantee, but that's what they're looking at as far as tropical storms. So that gives me a good indication of why they would issue the tropical storm watch now, even though the timetable is not until Thursday morning. So if they start feeling the winds, the earliest they could possibly feel those winds could be Wednesday night. Here's the hurricane force winds. Again, this is 74 miles an hour or greater, and it is well off the coast. In fact, this probability table from the National Hurricane Center not only puts it well far away from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but also puts it well west of the island of Bermuda. I don't see this expanding any further. It may shift a little bit to the left, so a little bit closer to the Outer Banks, but at this time, it's still no indication that it is going to make landfall either in the southeast Atlantic or Bermuda as a hurricane. But the hurricane force winds, at least, is not indicating from the National Hurricane Center that that would be prevalent towards eastern North Carolina. Well, the history of Erin has been really the big surprising thing. Again, from Friday morning until Friday evening, it went from a Category 1 straight up to a Category 5. It is maxed out so far of sustained winds of 160 miles an hour. You get past 156, it's not a Category 5. But it has dropped down and stayed as a Category 4 since Saturday. Now going into Monday night, well, the one thing is that it started to getting a little bit stronger as it went throughout the day yesterday and all the way into even today during the 11 a.m. update, but it's showing signs of slightly weakening, and I mean slightly. Category 3 is still a major hurricane, and it has been like that since Friday midday. But here's the one thing that I'm still on the fence whether or not it's actually going to weaken. Category 3 to Category 4, there's really no big difference. It's still a catastrophic hurricane. But where it's going to be over the course of the next 24 hours are water temperatures that are going to be somewhere in the ballpark of about 84 degrees, maybe approaching 86. But by tomorrow morning into Thursday, the water temperatures mostly in the trajectory are 86 to 88 degrees. Very, very warm water. Warm water fed into a hurricane, it's going to maintain its strength, if not strengthen. But it is also moving more north and south as opposed to moving east and west. So it wasn't going against the grain, and the flow, at least in this area, it may experience a little bit of shear, but not enough to drastically drop off its intensity. Its intensity, though, as we get to Wednesday into Thursday, but especially after Thursday, as it makes its way towards the northeast, it will speed up in forward velocity. It'll also start entering water temperatures that are 84 to 82 degrees and slowly dropping. So it's going to get into an environment that it may still be a Category 1 hurricane by Friday, but the water temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler. It's going to be moving a lot faster. I mean, look at the difference in distance from Thursday until Friday. It's going to be getting out into the North Atlantic very quickly, and that'll degrade the hurricane even more. What is the big point for us as far as the tropical storm winds? Well, we know that we're not going to get the tropical storm winds in South Carolina and maybe far eastern North Carolina, but the European model is indicating that Tuesday, so tomorrow night, we're already going to have waves that would be approaching maybe up to 5 feet off the coast of the Carolinas, where the European position puts it just next to the Bahamas. As we get into Wednesday night going into Thursday morning, now where it's centered as far as the European model is not that far away from Wilmington as well as Sail Beach and Myrtle Beach. We could see wave heights off the coast of the Low Country to the Grand Strand, upwards of maybe 10 feet, but that is well offshore. Well, we're not talking about 10-foot waves going into South Carolina or North Carolina beaches, but that's going to be pushing enough water in, and we're talking about wave heights still possibly 5, maybe up to 10 feet offshore on the beaches. Well, by the time we get to Thursday night and into Friday, it's still well now north of Bermuda, but we could still have wave heights on the Outer Banks of upwards of 5 to 10 feet. Meanwhile, along the South Carolina shores, well, wave heights won't be as big, but it'll still be windy. The GFS model puts a whole different picture. The GFS model puts it a lot stronger as it moves to the east of the Bahamas, but by the time we get to Wednesday night into Thursday, now we're talking about wave heights that could be slightly higher, maybe 10 feet, maybe pushing close to 15 feet, well offshore for South Carolina. But for North Carolina, now we're talking about wave heights that could be offshore from the Outer Banks upwards of 15 to 20 feet. Now, we're not talking about that's what the Outer Banks and South Carolina's coastline is going to deal with, but we're still talking about higher wave heights by Thursday morning. And the other thing we have to add to that is during low tide and high tide. If this is going to be occurring during high tide, well, exacerbate everything by about 2 to 3 feet inland right along the coast. So we could see a little bit of coastal flooding. And the GFS is putting the picture now by Friday noon well north of Bermuda. But look at the wave heights. The color differences in the lines, they're still going to be dealing with high wave heights of possibly even 10 to 15 feet going into Friday during noon. Well, right now we've got a high risk, pretty much covers all the way through the Low Country to the Grand Strand. Now, this has been updated in which the low risk for portions of Georgetown coastline, but for pretty much everybody from Jasper all the way to Colleton, Dorchester, Charleston, Georgetown, well, not including Georgetown, but Horry counties already right now under high risk for rip currents. And this is not anything to do with Erin, and this extends all the way up, getting close to Morehead City, and then for the Outer Banks, they've got a moderate risk. That's why this is very likely going to be a high risk as we get into tomorrow night through Thursday, as Erin makes its way well away from us, but those wave heights are going to be pushing in a lot of water, so the rip current risk is going to be significantly elevated, probably starting tomorrow night, if not by tomorrow afternoon, right through Thursday. And that is going to be an issue on the beaches. Here's another thing that's really interesting. The National Hurricane Center, there's one that's well off the coast. I'm not going to bother with that one. It only has a 10% chance. But one that is now approaching the Eastern Caribbean, it has a 60% chance over the next 7 days. When you see that X and then the line, well, that's where it's supposed to go, but where it is potential development is somewhere in the central Eastern Caribbean, all the way into the southwest Atlantic, over by where Erin is right now. This yellow line, this line all the way up to Erin, that is a history of Erin ever since it was tracked. So the yellow line, this is an area of interest, it was an invest, then it became a tropical storm for a few days, and then Friday morning it became a Category 1 hurricane. Friday evening became a Category 5 by Saturday morning. But that line where the yellow is, the top line is where Erin was. This X in this line is where this new development, if this develops, this will be Ferdinand. But where it develops, that is going to be the very interesting thing, because if you remember, I showed the water temperatures. Well, that entire line, especially when Erin became a Category 1 hurricane all the way to a Category 5 and now, all the water temperatures that have been along that line and expanded out of where Erin went through, there's something called upwelling, where all the water underneath the surface of the ocean has been stirred up and pulled up. Anything that spins is going to spin, just like when you flush the toilet, the water is going to spin. Well, the water is going to spin all the way down a good depth in the ocean, and all the cooler water in depths of the ocean are going to get pulled up. That'll cool off the surface temperature of the water. Not dramatically, but if Erin has been moving through water temperatures that have been between 84 to 88 degrees, if that develops and turns into Ferdinand, if it runs along anywhere along that line or outside of that line on the immediate level, the water temperatures may not be that warm. And a lot of models are indicating that if that is the trajectory, it may be a tropical storm or a low-end Category 1 hurricane before it gets into the Central Caribbean, in which the water temperatures are a lot warmer. Regardless of upwelling, it may start to intensify. This is a long ways away, and if this develops, we're talking about sometime next week, but just something to keep an eye on. If this actually starts developing, we could be talking about this somewhere in the areas from Puerto Rico all the way to the Bahamas as late as Labor Day. So something to keep in mind, that as we track this, something that we'll look at next week. Not necessarily now, but we still have Erin. The bottom line is that Hurricane Erin, still a Category 4 hurricane, winds at 130, gusting to 165, moving northwest at 10. 11 o'clock update will give us a graphical update of now where the National Hurricane Center thinks it's going. But at this time, it is still doing a major impact to the Caribbean, and it is not expected to make landfall in the U.S., but tropical storm watches are already in effect for the Outer Banks of North Carolina. No tropical watches or watches of any kind are issued right now for the Palmetto State coastline. We'll continue updating this here on WELTX on the streaming services as well as on News 19. But for now, I'm Chief Meteorologist Erin Latest. Stay with News 19. We'll keep you advised.